Touchdown, Chargers! Welcome to Chargers Weekly. Great to be back at the Bolt with Jahleel Addae. And today, Thursday, February 20th, so a couple days, a lot of us are going to be packing up and heading out to Indianapolis. Could not be more excited. Just sell it right here at the top about the lineup that we're going to be delivering you. Pods every day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Joe Hortiz, Chad Alexander, GM, assistant GM of the Chargers will join us. Daniel Jeremiah, able to carve out a little bit of time with our man DJ, does the games with me and Shannon Farron on the radio, and of course is the best NFL draft analyst in the business. We'll have Matt Miller from ESPN. We'll have Mina Kimes. We'll have from ESPN. We'll have a bunch of people from NFL Network. Greg Rosenthal, I think, is going to check in. Lance Zierlein, who knows more. He's an old man, of course, one of the great O-line coaches in the history of the NFL. He's going to check in. Our friend Brett Coleman and Charles Davis, loves CD, going to get him in there. So stacked. So keep an eye on everything. Just want to get that out on the top, Jahleel, because we're awfully excited.
Money, that's a loaded baked potato,
right? That's the
that's
bacon
everything.
bits, the chives,
butter, the
sour
whole
cream,
nine.
exactly right, and the cheese.
That part.
So, Jahleel, let's start with this. Figure I'll lean on your personal experience because you're someone that seemed to really enjoy his time with the Chargers, and look. Unfortunately or fortunately for you guys, we know what you make. We know what the contracts look like. You get a nice contract from the Chargers, and then 2019 rolls around and off to Houston. Got to make your money while it's there. Just kind of give us an idea of what it's like having a connection with a team and then having an agent, knowing what the market is, and kind of trying to put that whole puzzle together and what goes into you weighing what you want to do.
It's a great question. So obviously, first 6 years of my career here with the Chargers, 4 in San Diego and then 2 in LA. I signed my extension after the 2016 season. Stayed with the Chargers. I didn't even hit the market. I was like, you know what? I love the front office. I love the team. I love the coach. Obviously, Anthony Lynn was coming in from the Mike McCoy era. And my agent was like, you know what? The Chargers have reached out. They're really interested. They want to extend you. And he's like, do you want to test the market? He's like, now you can test the market and you can make more money, right? Or you could test the market and you can fall flat on your face. You just never know what the safety market's going to be at that point in time. With that being said, I was like, hey, do I want to I have a bird in hand, right? And you never can go wrong with a bird in hand. A special teams coach back in the day would always say, you cannot go broke taking a profit.
That's right.
Right? So at that time, the Chargers had offered me my deal, and I had to weigh, was it worth it, going out and maybe going to a city I didn't want to play for, an organization I didn't want to play for. And then at that point, when you're young, you're trying to make that money. Me being a free agent, I'm like, am I going to get this 6.5 that the Chargers are offering me? Right? So ultimately, I decided to stay with the Chargers. And it was the best decision that I made. Obviously, I'm still here rocking with you, Money.
Exactly
so,
right.
It was a good experience. It's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Now we moved to 2019 when I was released by the Chargers.
Right.
I sat for about a month, and it's a weird process because you're just waiting for your agent's the middleman. He's explaining to you what the front offices are saying. He's explaining to you what scouts and coaches are saying, and you're just really waiting there every day. You're working out, you're getting up, you're doing stuff to keep your mind off of it. You're wondering if your phone's going to ring or if it's not going to ring. Ultimately, the Texans did give me a shout. That was the only team. It was Detroit, and it was Houston at the time who was kind of warm. The Texans reached out to me. I'm like, look, beautiful city, no state taxes. Organization was good, and away I went.
So let's go to if you don't mind, the release and sort of what we hear a lot about that, right? Why is it that teams get to do this and players can't, and they're the bad guy and the team's the good guy, always the good guy, that sort of thing. Because, look, there's a handful of players on this team that are probably going through what you went through and looking at their cap number and looking at their reps and looking at the position group. And we can probably dig into that a little bit. I kind of wrote everybody down that I thought could be potential cap casualties as they try to get more and more free agent money. I mean, this team has 40 – I don't know that number. I'm pretty sure it's over 40 free agents. Wow. So that's kind of how they had to build it last year. Just draft contracts coming up, a lot of one-year deals. So you're talking about a lot of dudes on this roster that they're going to have to bring back. Some for big numbers, some for small numbers. But just kind of having that seed and the planet in the back of your head that, I might be released.
Yeah. Yes, and at the time for me, I was a starter, right? But I knew what I was making in that third year. And a lot of times it's a business, and you have to look at it as a business. When you're a little kid, you're playing the game for the love of it. When you get to this level, you're still playing the game for the love of it, but you have to understand it's a business, right? And I seen what kind of money I was going to be making the following year. They just had drafted Derwin the year before that, and we were almost the same type of player as far as box players, right? Rayshawn Jenkins was behind me, a true free safety. And it was about year 7 for me, so I understood the business at this time. I understood what could be. I was real with myself, and I felt like I probably was going to be released. And I told my agent that around this time, he gave me a call and had a talk with Tom Telesco, who was the general manager at the time, and they said they were going to go in a different direction. Stings, yeah, because you're a competitor, right? It's an organization that I was with for 6 straight years of blood, sweat, and tears. But I knew the business side, so I kept my feelings out of it, right? And it's never good getting that call, but I do respect Tom, because he did communicate with my agent at the time, like, look, we're gonna release him early enough to where he can get out there, right? Rather than hold him all the way through free agency and then last second chop block. And then now all the teams that you possibly could have got on, obviously, have a rate. Now you're looking vet minimum. You're looking camp. You're not getting in until camp. Whereas when he let me go early, all due respect to Tom, I was able to find a team, hopped in there before OTA started.
Yeah. Look, this may be a slight exaggeration. I don't know if there's a player on the team that Anthony Lynn liked more than Rayshawn Jenkins, man.
Yeah, he did. He loved Ray.
He loved
Ray. He did. And what's funny story about Ray? Ray came in 4th round draft pick from the University of Miami. And he had a hard time preseason. He was sucking wind in the first preseason game. Coach Lynn had to get on him, but he got on him out of love, right? And we all see what kind of player Rayshawn Jenkins is now, going on year, I think it's 8 or 9. Top, could be a Pro Bowl player, all-pro type caliber player. So we were stacked, dude, and I knew it. I mean, we were stacked with young guys behind us who made a lot less money than me, who was going to free up other guys. So once again, the business side money, you got to understand it.
And I think it's perfect time as you kind of lay that out, that, I am sensitive to this. I get it. Yeah. These guys are young. The idea that your career could be over and you have this tiny window to make money because 100%. You're going to be figuring out how you're going to earn money from age 29, 32,
sometimes
at the most,
earlier.
Sometimes earlier for the rest of your life. So I don't say this flippantly. I say it just by looking at what you just talked about, a business.
Right.
Joey Bosa's on the books for $36 million. If they simply move on from him, it's a savings of $25 million. That gets added to their current 60, based on what the projection is. Depends what the Players Association wants to do. Is it 277? Is it 281? It's kind of up to them what percentage of smoothing they want to accept. But you're talking about putting $25 million added to that 65. Now you're at $80 million or at $90 million of cap space. I think you look at Trey Pipkins, $9 million at a tackle. Great. Like you said, $9 million at a guard. You better be a pretty damn good guard.
That's different.
You better be a top 5, top 10 guard 100%. In the league. And so, that's where that number comes in. I think, with J.K. and Gus and Haskins and Kamani Vidal and the way this draft is shaping up to look.
It's a packed running back draft.
Yeah. So Gus, $3.1 million in savings right there. A guy that struggled to stay healthy. So those are kind of the ones that I look at as just kind of, they're sort of glaring a little bit. They're kind of like, look at me. Here's, you want to go from 65.5 to 100 million in cap space and try to figure out how to use it. Those are the ones that I would look at. And look, each one of those guys, they could go to and say, hey, let's figure this out.
For sure.
And that's a possibility as well. So that's kind of the number. 65.6, fifth most in the league as it stands at a 277 cap. 100 million would be the number if you kind of add in those players I just mentioned. And then I pointed out, I think it's north of 40. I thought I was in like the 30s, but I feel like it might be north of 40 guys because of all these one-year deals. So you've got to populate a 53-man roster. So $100 million sounds like a lot,
right?
But Rashawn Slater's up for an extension. You would assume you're going to want to do that instead of having him play on a fifth-year option at $19 million. You look at those numbers, and I just kind of look at the draft class, right? Penei Sewell was taken 4 picks ahead of him. He and Slater have both had incredible
careers so far.
Starts to their careers. Sewell got 4 years, 112. Right now, Tristan Wirfs is the top paid tackle in football, 5 years, 140. So you're talking about $28 million a year on average, and about $80 to $90 million guaranteed.
And that's what players, for people at home don't know, that's what players and agents do, right? They look and say, you know what? Well, we have an all-pro, Pro Bowl type tackle. Who's the highest tackle in the league? Let's look at their stats. Let's look at the sacks allowed. We're going to compare. We're going to bring it to the front office like, look, we have a guy that's just as good as him. Obviously, we know that the salary cap goes up every year, right? So no matter what money, you could be playing safety 5 years ago, right? And then the guy who comes after you 5 years later who still doesn't perform just as good as you because of the salary cap rising, he's going to get paid more, right? So obviously a lot more. Yeah. So you're looking at those numbers, and that's around the ballpark that he's going to definitely ask for.
I would say. And remember, it's not even if the average value per year is $28.5 million. If you want, Sewell I think is 28 flat. I think Wirfs is just above that. So if they want 28.25, then
hey, as petty as that sounds,
it
like, happens.
That doesn't mean that immediately becomes 28.25 in 2025. Like they'll make it work. And so if I had to guess, it'd be below 19 because that's what his 5th-year option is, and they'd love to ease that number to make it lower to keep that money. So that's number one. The more interesting one is for me is Khalil Mack, because by all accounts it sounds like there's a market out there, and I had thought either he retires or he comes back to the Chargers. That's kind of the way this is going to go. But when I start reading, PFF's got him at 2 years, $45 million, $40 million guaranteed
at this age,
and then I start looking at the rest of the class, and I think that's where he's so important to this team just from a leadership and attitude standpoint. But I think that's where it starts getting kind of interesting, is if you're talking about a guy that's going to average $22.5 million. This is just kind of PFF numbers. It's sort of easy to run by these. He's the highest paid guy. You got Josh Sweat coming off an incredible Super Bowl. They got him pegged at 3 years, $18 million. They got Hassan Reddick at 2 years, $25 million. Malcolm Kuntz, who's coming off that big injury, but a heck of a player when he's been healthy. That's 2 years, $18.75. So do you think they have those conversations, or are the intangibles such that Khalil is so important to sort of the chemistry and the makeup of this team that it's worth those extra, few millions of dollars to get him back here?
I think when you look at it, right, it's either, okay, so what are you doing with Joey Bosa? And that's going to say a lot, right? Because if Joey is released, if Joey is let go, then obviously Khalil coming back is a vital part of this defense. And you can look at his age. You can say, well, he's 32, he's 33. And do you want to pay a guy at this age? Typically you don't. But when you watch how he takes care of his body, when you watch how he's available each and every Sunday and the level that he's still playing at, I don't know that there's another guy that you can go out there in the draft or free agency and say, we're going to bring him in. He knows the system. We know what kind of leader he is. We know what he means to the locker room and the impact that he brings each and every Sunday, right? So if it's me, obviously I'm not upstairs, but this guy is one of the pieces I feel like on the defense that you have to keep. Yeah, you might have to spend a little bit of money. You might have to drop a bag on him for it, right? But he's worth it, and you have it.
Yeah, and I think there is something to be said about knowing what you have versus what you're bringing in, knowing how he plays in the system, knowing the weight that his words carry in the room. And like you said, if you kind of then you get into the draft, and let's just say you're taking an edge in the 3rd round or something, well, now you're bringing that guy into a room with Khalil Mack for the next year to 2 years to kind of follow his lead. So I think that's part of the calculus as well. I get it. I understand why. I think they had the Packers, the Lions as potentially interested teams, but to me it makes too much sense for him to be the guy that comes back, as opposed to a Josh Sweat who had a really good Super Bowl.
He did.
But going just by PFF grades, you're talking about Khalil was the 5th ranked edge defender in 2024. Josh Sweat was the 36th. And Hassan Reddick, now granted he didn't play, so that's not really
that's
fair.
a whole. But do you want to deal with that?
That's what I mean. And so it's like to me that's an obvious one. So now you're pulling another 20 because that's just going to be a short term, so there's really nowhere to hide that money. That's going to be $20 million then taken off. So I would say between Slater and Khalil, your two big ticket items, you're going to pull at least, I would guess, 30 to 35 off that number. That's just right there. And then we get into Elijah Molden, who I think is next in line.
Yeah.
And this is something you can speak to, how important he is just for this particular team, how well he operated in Jesse Minter's defense, and what it allowed Derwin James to do to have him back there.
Yeah, it was essentially like you had three starters with him and Alohi back there playing the two high safety, and then allowing Derwin to be by the line of scrimmage where he's best at. Is he blitzing? Is he playing the big nickel position? Is he rerouting, jamming, getting to the curl? Is he bumping into the box, playing that will linebacker look? So there's so many things you could do with Derwin, and we all know that Derwin plays his best ball. Not that he can't play high safety, because he can, and he can take away the number one tight end, as we know. But him in that box, him blitzing, him being disruptive, is his best bet. That's his best game. That's when Derwin comes alive, right? You got to get him going early. Close to the ball, right? So having Elijah back there and not missing a beat, he's very rangy. He's smart. He understands the system. He communicates well. And a safety is the quarterback of the defense, right? You, as a safety, people think that you're just the last line of defense and you're just saving tackles. No, you're checking 2x2 look formations. You're checking 3x1 formations. You're checking empty looks. You're checking when the quarterback looks and looks to the sideline. There's so much stuff that goes on as a safety that you have to have a guy back there that you trust. And sometimes a coach might say, look, he's not the most athletic guy on the field, but he's the smartest, and I know he's going to get guys lined up. And Elijah can do both.
Yeah, and that's Alohi as well.
Yes, he can.
Just they're glue guys.
Yep.
You know, and you got to have, or I like to call it caulk. It's just a better vision for me. You know, everybody likes the look of their fancy travertine tile, but if you ain't got caulk, the tile is going to start sliding around and not be in the right spot. So, and then after that, I think it becomes the conversation of, what is it that you're looking for at defensive tackle?
Yes, sir.
Because interior defenders are not – you're talking about a very diverse group of people. And guys that get upfield like Odigizua, we just saw what Milton Williams did all season long for the Eagles. You know, what Jordan Davis, Javon Carter do, how important that position is for the Eagles and what they were able to do when the grass wasn't getting torn up out from under them like it was 2 years ago in Arizona, and what they can do on Muzarike. And then I think that's kind of where, to me, that's going to be one of the more interesting sort of debates in the front office room is, you know, you talked about it, bird in the hand, number one scoring defense, Tierre Tart, Poona Ford, Morgan Fox, Tito Aboigbe. You know, right now, the only D tackles on the team are Tito, Aboigbe, who's a project as a fourth rounder last year, and Scott Matlock, who I think is probably playing more fullback than he is defensive tackle. So that's, you've got to re-sign Poona, Tierre, Morgan, or you've got to go out and you got to
bring some guys in.
Right,
or
that's
draft.
what I mean.
Yeah, because it's a position that's light right now. And like you said, you have a bird in hand, and these are guys who know your system. These are guys who were a part of the number one defense in the league at one point in time, right? These are guys who have played really stellar defense for Jesse Minter in the coaching staff. So I say this to say, yes, you want that fancy name. Yeah, you want that big time guy who walks off the bus and he looks like a Sioux, right? Big body, broad shoulders. But if these guys are getting the job done, if they're creating a new line of scrimmage, if they're penetrating, if they're keeping their shoulders squared to the line of scrimmage and not turning their shoulders and creating seams and creating run lanes like they did not do during the season, they played really, really good football. It's almost like, do you save that money to use elsewhere? Right? Now, if you feel like you don't need to save that money to use elsewhere, and that's up to the upstairs, then it's like, okay, we can bring guys back, maybe one of those guys back that we love, and then go splash big with the free agent. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, do you feel like you need more juice, more upfield juice? Like, as good as those guys were, and look, Tierre might have had the best get-off on the team last year, but it was in a limited role. Poona was great, but I think it's kind of like, I'm talking about
game changer.
Yeah, like what we saw from Milton Williams, what you see. Look, there's only one Aaron Donald, but I'm talking about an interior Chris Jones who can rush the passer.
I was going to say that, yep.
And I just think that's not necessarily what the guys that they had were. And,
they were more so run stoppers.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where it then comes in, like, what are we better off doing? Because, look, you got a couple I'm just looking at the top. I mean, jeez, it is so stacked. You look at Mason Graham, who's going to go top 5. Kenneth Grant, who's probably going to go top 15. Yeah, I mean, that guy's 6'4", 340, and they would rush him off the edge on pass downs, and he was still athletic. Yeah, the interesting one is Walter Nolan, who, if there's nothing off the field,
right,
you're talking about a guy who's going to probably be a top 10, top 15 pick. So that's one that could slide to you, and it'll come down to kind of what his meetings are like.
And then it's what is it off the field? Like, what kind of guy is he off the field?
Right.
And money, if I'm a coach, right, this is football. This isn't baseball by any means. This isn't soccer, and I have much respect for those sports. But I want a guy with a little bit of edge.
Salt.
Just a little salt. Not hot sauce, but just some salt, right?
Salt. Exactly.
Just a little edgy, especially in those trenches, right? So like you said, they do all their research. I remember when I was coming out, they told me that they even talked to my high school coach. They even go back and date back to talking to middle school teachers, and they really dig in and dig deep. So I know they're going to do the due diligence on him and see exactly what it is with his off the field. Because when you look at it, right, Jalen Carter, he had some off the field issues coming out, right?
Certainly.
And they said
that was
right. But they said his red flag was his off the field issues,
right.
And look how big of a game changer he is.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right. So
no doubt.
You give and take.
It's exactly, and I think, to me, it's just it's sort of a this or that, and this was something that DJ illustrated last week on the pod, and he was like, basically what happens is they're going to pull out a card, and they're going to go, do you want this or do you want that? And it's a free agent plus this draft pick, or this draft pick plus this free agent. So it's like, if we do this, if you sign Milton Williams for $23 million a year, you sign on Wuzurike for whatever, $20 million. Okay. So now we don't have to use that draft. Or I'm going to take that $20 million and I'm going to spend it on, Trey Smith at guard. And now I'm going to draft, So that's kind of what the calculus is how do the draft picks and the free agents line up based on what the depth is at each position. I
agree. And you mentioned guard. And so we're talking about D tackle, we're talking about guard, right? So glaringly, it's the interior on the offensive side and the defensive side. And that's where I was going to ask you, Money, where do you think is more of a priority on the offensive side interior or the defensive side interior?
So I think we've said this before here, and it's not. I'm trying to celebrate somebody here. I'm not trying to take a shot at anybody. I'm trying to celebrate. The defensive side of the ball, the coaching that has been happening is incredible. Just every single player that gets dropped in is ready to go. You got 2 rookie corners that are starting. You've got guys, Elijah Molden, who was to some degree, just cast off in Tennessee. He comes 100%. In and he's a vital part of this defense. And it's the number 1 scoring defense in the league. Poona Ford 1-year deal. T.R. Tarta cast off from Miami. Like on and on and on. And what did this coaching staff do? Whether it's just take your pick at every level, Navarro, Mike Elston, Coach Klink, Coach O'Leary, every single one of them. And then, the cook that's putting it all together, and Jesse Minter. Yeah. I say all that to say
they're okay on that side.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
I kind of get to the offensive side, and it's like, let's get a little.
Let's stitch it up a little.
Yeah. Let's maybe get the gourmet ingredients for that side, and we can go with the generics on that side. So
I'm with you.
And plus, I think it's also who's available and what's it going to cost. Like when you go into free agents, do I think this team is going to spend? If Robert Hunt got $20 million a year from the Panthers and he's barely in the top 10 as a guard,
right?
What is Trey Smith going to want? Like, I just don't see this team doing that. I can't imagine, even though he's not even 26 yet.
He's a young guy.
So he's young. He's good. But if you're talking about $23, $24 million, I just kind of go down a couple, and I see Kevin Zeitler, that this front office knows in Baltimore, who played really well in Detroit, who was part of the best offensive line in the league last year. And to me, that just kind of jumps out at me. And then I go right below that, and I see Patrick McCarry, another Baltimore guy, 27 years old. So if you want to go a little bit younger, that with all the versatility that he has to play all 5 positions like that to me jumps out a little bit more than the big name of Trey Smith. Even though Trey might be with T. Higgins getting franchised, he might be the number 1 free agent in the market right now.
And with obviously the other spots that the Chargers need to fill. We talked about Khalil. We talked about Slater, right? So you're already dishing out a big bag in those areas. So, like, I agree with you. It's deep enough to where you don't have to go number one guy.
Right.
And you can shuffle down and almost figuratively do what they did at the corner spot in the draft and free agency and still get a really good, productive guard, but not spend all your capital.
Right. And then I think you know, with guard and center, there really aren't a lot of centers in free agency. They've all kind of got their. Drew Dahlman's the best one. Don't know what, I think they're talking about Chicago maybe trying to get him in there, and they're talking about Pro Football Focus has him at 4 years, 46, average of $11.5 million. So that's a big number for a center. Right behind him, though, is Ryan Kelly, who obviously has had
I played with Ryan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I played with Ryan. Really.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So you know Ryan?
Yeah.
I mean, heck of a player.
Heck of a player, dude.
Just has been banged up, quite a bit. But he's 31 going on 32. So that's one that's interesting. If you compare, maybe if that's how you do it. I do think they're going to bring back Bradley Bozeman. Everything you hear about how beloved he is, Jahleel.
I've been around Brad, and he's a stand-up guy, dude. Awesome, good leader. Obviously, he gives them what they need, gives them what they want. Like, I don't see why not, right? I don't see why not.
So that, to me, and that is why I kind of am not so sure about bringing in a guy at $12 million a year, if that's what it's going to be with Dahlman. But Ryan Kelly, I could see. I could kind of see, because it's not a good draft for centers. Right. You got Grace Abel, who's, guard/center. From North Dakota State that people are talking about is sort of the only thing in the draft, and I don't know if they want to spend pick number 22 on a center. Tyler Booker from Alabama is sort of the one guard that they're talking about as a high-level guard, as the leader of that offensive line in Alabama at a guard position. And so that's a possibility if they value, where he might be on their vertical, I should say, compared to their horizontal and what might be available to them. So that's one there. Let's dig into this a little bit more. So, just go through all of these. Christian Fulton, free agent. Tierra Tart, free agent. Poona Ford, free agent. We talked about Elijah Molden, Khalil Mack. J.K. Dobbins is a free agent. Asante Samuel is a free agent. Was hurt last year. Denzel Perriman was important for that room, and at $2 million a year. I think you even look at somebody like Tucker Fisk and what he meant in that tight end room. It's $1 million, but it's someone that's a free agent. Right now, you've got one tight end on the roster.
Right.
Will Dissly, that's it. Stone Smart's a free agent. Tucker Fisk is a free agent. I think McAllen Castles technically was brought back. So you have him. But that's, more of a practice squad depth developmental piece. So Hayden Hurst, free agent. You got one tight end on the roster. Stone Smart, free agent. That you've got to figure out.
And this draft has really good tight ends. I will say that, Money.
Yes,
and it's
do.
That's an option for the Chargers at pick 22, right?
Yes, Colston Loveland. Tyler Warren won't be there.
You don't think Tyler Warren's
chance.
Not a chance?
No chance.
He's generational, huh?
Yeah, no chance.
Okay.
I think DJ.
That's who I was eyeing. Money.
I think DJ has him going 7th overall to the Jets.
Got you.
So Colston Loveland, though, they're kind of talking about maybe being available at 22, but then you kind of get, as Will's freaking nodding his head over there get that back, Colston Loveland, but then I think, okay, so here's the game they'll play. Is Colston Loveland at 22.
Yeah.
Let's just say if it's running back tight end, because I think you bring back JK, but I do think you've got to draft an RB1. I think that's imperative for this team for what they want to do. Just juice machine out there.
So you go RB1 over
so
tight end.
So that's the
one.
question. What's the better option? Is it the sort of high upside, more projecting Mason Taylor, Jason Sun out of LSU, Elijah Arroyo out of Miami? Is it Fannin out of Bowling Green, Harold Fannin? Is it that guy in the second round?
Right.
And Amarian Hampton at 22? Is it, or do you flip that and it's the tight end in the first round, and then you're kind of looking second, third round, fourth round for that running back?
And both positions are deep, Money. So it's basically, like you said, it's what they think is most important. What's on their vertical board, right? What do we need now? And that's all up to their discretion.
Right.
Because both, like I said, running back, tight end, really good draft.
Yes.
So you can go early in the first round, and then you can try to find somebody down that ladder a little bit who has a lot of upside, who some people may be sleeping on, which we've seen them do in the past, go and grab some sleepers out of the 5th round.
Yeah,
right?
so Exactly. So to kind of, I think look, it's a copycat league, right?
Yep.
You know, running backs we might get 3. I think we got a shot at 3 running backs in the first round. Ashton Genty's probably going to go in the top 10, maybe top 15. It'll be interesting if he starts to slide, if the Chargers are interested in jumping up there to snatch him before he gets to the Steelers at 20, or he gets to, I'm trying to think of who's ahead of them that might, are the Broncos. Yeah, Broncos are ahead of him. If he gets to the Broncos, if he gets to the Bengals, you know, that's something they might consider. But then, you know, like, PFF has got Travion Henderson ranked 65th. He's going in the first round. He's like a Bucky Irving clone.
He's a dog.
You know, and
he's a dog.
And you saw that explosiveness.
Both running backs from Ohio State.
Yeah, exactly. Quinshon Judkins as well. So I don't know if he'd go in the first round, but I think at the very least, there's no doubt Amari and Hampton and Ashton Genty are going in the first round. And Amari and Hampton, you're talking 6'1", 220. And I think DJ told us he hears 6% body fat at 6'1", 220. So that's kind of what you got to ask yourself when you're sitting there at pick 22. Is that what you want? Or do you think Cam Scadaboo's going to slide to the third?
Ooh, Scadaboo. He's a fan favorite too, Money.
Exactly right.
He's a fan favorite.
And look, if he runs well, you're talking about someone who's going to probably go in the second round now.
But that's what they're saying, that he doesn't run well. But listen, I didn't run well. I played a decade in the NFL.
Right.
So I'm biased, right? What I see on tape from him, I don't care what you run. He doesn't get caught. He pulls it from defenders. He's not easy to bring down. I'm more of a like, they'll say, look, well, this guy had an awesome game and he had 2 interceptions. Well, were they lollipops or did he go get them? Right. So yeah, he might not run a fast forward. He might not jump out of the gym. But when I turn on the tape, he's a football player. Right. And that's what if I'm a general manager. And my experience, I want a football player.
Yeah, so and there's very few. Here we go. I forgot I had this all laid out. So yeah, you're high at Ashton Genty, Amari Hampton, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins are kind of that top group, and then right behind him you got Caleb Johnson, Dylan Sampson, more of like that athlete, super explosive, Cam Scadaboo, Devin Neal, sort of that just Kansas, bowling ball out of Kansas, you know, that kind of guy. So there's a lot of that tight end, like we said, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, then right behind him, Elijah Arroyo, Mason Taylor, and then Gunnar Helm, Fannin, Ferguson out of Oregon is.
He's a big prospect too. He's a big boy, 6'4".
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 6'4". He can go.
So that's sort of how. Look, we just did it last year. We just did this last year. It's kind of what you have to put yourself through. The exercise to put yourself through is Joe Alt and Ladd McConkey, or Malik Neighbors and.
Who knows?
Exactly. Like someone who you've never heard of because they didn't play last year or they played incredibly poorly last year. I don't know if it was Kingsley Suamataia who got benched, you know, and forced Joe Tooney to get kicked out to left tackle. Like that's part of the calculus is let's take the number 1 tackle and then we feel really good about a wide receiver in a deep wide receiver class.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what, you know, and you look at edge is deep, man. Shamar Stewart and Nick Scorton, James Pierre, those guys will all be gone. Jahad Campbell's somebody that's interesting that DJ brought up because he played linebacker just because Dallas Turner was ahead of him, Will Anderson was ahead of him. But then you look at the reps when he's playing edge and he is a freaking missile.
He can go.
So that stuff's interesting. Like we said, the guards, Tyler Booker, Gray Zabel. We already went through defensive tackle. So... You know, it's kind of your preview. Okay, so let's finish with this, Jahleel. Davante Adams and the conversation surrounding him.
I've been hearing it.
Right?
Yeah.
And so he wants to play on the West Coast. Some people are starting to suggest that the Rams might be trying to run a power play on Stafford and say, well, you know, you want to get a little something for you and get a little something for Cooper Kupp. And next thing you know, there's an Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams reunion in Rams uniforms. It sounds a little crazy to me. I don't know why you move on from a top 10 quarterback in the league that took you and won a Super Bowl and was playing the Eagles better than anybody else that played him in the playoffs. But that's kind of what the conversation is. So just kind of your thoughts. You ever played Davante?
I played Davante.
Okay.
Obviously, he's not a burner, but he can take the top off. I know I'm like mixing my words when I say that, but he has football speed.
Right.
Probably arguably the best routes in the game, silky smooth, really gets in and out of his breaks really well. And I don't really view him as a character issue, guys. I know being at the Raiders, there was a lot of it was a crap show over there.
Yeah,
Just to be
exactly.
It was a crap show,
Exactly.
right? And he wasn't happy with a lot of things that was going on. But throughout his career, when I was in the league, been around him, no guys have been around him, haven't ever viewed him as that kind of receiver. Never viewed him as a diva. Now, is he a number one? Absolutely.
Right.
He is. So do we go get him? I feel that there should be a big push to go get him. Honestly, obviously T. Higgins has been a big talk, but he just been franchise tagged, right?
Right. I guess so. Someone sent me a text that said that T was tagged, but I don't see it.
Or they're planning to tag him.
Maybe that's what it is.
Right? So maybe they're planning to tag him.
I don't want to out whoever it was. That someone sent me a text, though, that
Don't out
said
him,
looks
buddy.
like T got tagged, but I'm looking at it now, and I just do not see it. I guess kind of it's what everybody has heard, that if they can't figure something out, they're going to tag him until they can, is maybe what it was. So I thought he got tagged. But
Okay,
so
so
my corrections and retractions on me.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
so neither here or there, right? So if T's not tagged, obviously that's an option, right? If he is tagged, Davante Adams, you got to go big name. You got to go big name. You got to go a superstar guy who can stretch the field, number one. You can build your offense around him, and then you have Ladd in the slot and outside who you can do a lot of different stuff with. Teams can't roll the coverage. Team can't double Ladd. Now, if you do double, you're doubling the number one and you're doubling Ladd, and then now you're creating opportunities to really get this offense explosive.
Yeah,
so,
you can
I
get-
mean,
You
that's a
Q over
no-brainer to
Z,
me. Exactly.
Let Davante play the X, and I think his yards, what do you have? Almost 1,100 last year, 8 touchdowns, and think about what he was playing with.
Exactly.
You know, just the circus that he was under, the tent that he was under, and the circus that was being run that he had to deal with the Raiders and then with the Jets and that mess, and yet he gets out of there with, I think, 85 catches, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. His drop rate was the highest of his career, I think. It's a little over 10% of targets, I think. So it was a little bit high, but, I'm not worried about that.
No,
It hasn't been an issue for him.
He's still very, very, very productive.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not necessarily about the individual. It's about how they fit, and how, like, when you talk about T. Higgins and is this guy really worth $30 million? I said, well, just kind of envision how he fits. Don't worry about what his stats are going to be on the Chargers. Think about what it would mean to put him on the field at the X with Ladd at the slot and how that works together.
Exactly.
So just kind of look at it. Think about Herbert's stats as opposed to individual Higgins stats.
If you ask Herbert if he thinks he's worth $30 million, I guarantee you he'll say yes.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. So we'll keep an eye on that. It doesn't seem like anyone's going to trade for Davante Adams with a $35 million salary. That's going to probably be a cut unless the Jets feel like bringing him back, which would be awfully weird.
I think they're rebuilding over there.
Yeah. So that's my guess, and that's, I think, probably going to do it for us. That's sort of your combine primer, free agency / franchise tag, window opening on Tuesday of this week. Primer, I think we kind of covered it all, and certainly with free agency coming upon us, we'll be out of the combine. That's where a lot of deals get done when trades are going down, so we'll get all that. And again, make sure it's not just going to be once a week. Next week, we'll be posting pods at the end of every day, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So be sure to check your podcast player for the updates. Check the YouTube if you want to watch the video component and see all these great people. And Jahleel, certainly appreciate it, man.
Likewise, Money. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next week. Bolt up, everybody.